Before leaving for work, my daughter said, "Dad, don't go today." "Why, sweetie? Just stay home, please." I laughed it off and left. An hour later, she called sobbing. "Dad, it happened. You should have listened to me." I raced back. When I opened the front door, my daughter was standing pale-faced, pointing upstairs with trembling hands. What I saw there was horrifying. Chapter 1, The Warning. Jason Boone stood in the kitchen of his craftsman home in Portland, watching the rain streak down the windows while his 7-year-old daughter, Opal, pushed scrambled eggs around her plate. She had barely touched her breakfast, and those gray eyes, so much like his own, kept darting toward him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Dad," she said quietly, setting down her fork. "Don't go to work today." Jason glanced at his watch. He had a meeting at 9 o'clock with potential investors for Boone and Farrell Strategic Consulting, the firm he'd built from nothing with his best friend, Theron, over the past 8 years. Missing it wasn't an option. "Why, sweetie?" he asked, kneeling beside her chair. Opal's small hands gripped the edge of the table. "Just stay home, please." His daughter had always been sensitive, what his mother called intuitive beyond her years. 3 months ago, she'd refused to get in the car before a family trip, crying until they delayed, leaving by an hour. They later learned a multi-car pileup had occurred on the highway at exactly the time they would have been there. His wife, Darlene, had dismissed it as coincidence. Jason wasn't so sure, but today he had no choice. The Richardson account was worth $3 million, and Theron had been handling most of the prep work. Jason needed to be there to close it. "I'll be home by dinner," he promised, kissing the top of Opal's head. "We can watch that documentary about the octopus you wanted to see." Her chin trembled. "Something bad is going to happen, Daddy. Something really bad." Darlene appeared in the doorway, her auburn hair pulled into a careless ponytail, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. At 34, his wife of 9 years still turned heads, but lately she'd seemed distant, distracted. She blamed it on stress from her freelance graphic design work. "Pal, stop making a fuss," Darlene said, her tone sharper than necessary. "Your father has important things to do." Jason caught something in his wife's eyes. A flicker of something he couldn't identify. Guilt. Fear. It passed so quickly he thought he'd imagined it. "I'll be fine, Opal girl," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "I promise." An hour later, Jason sat in the sleek conference room of their downtown office, reviewing the Richardson pitch for the third time. Theron hadn't shown up yet, which was odd. His business partner was many things: brash, occasionally reckless with money, prone to taking credit for Jason's ideas, but never late for important meetings. Jason's phone buzzed. Opal's name flashed on the screen. His heart clenched. She never called during school hours. "Opal. Dad, it happened." Her voice dissolved into sobs. "You should have listened to me." The phone nearly slipped from his hands. "What happened? Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm home. I forgot my permission slip for the field trip. So the teacher had me call Mama bring it." "But Dad, when I got home," her breath hitched. "You need to come home right now." "Is your mother okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm not hurt, but you need to come home. Please hurry." Jason was already moving, grabbing his keys, ignoring the confused looks from his assistant as he sprinted past. The 15-minute drive took 8, his mind racing through possibilities. A break-in, an accident, a medical emergency, never the truth. He left his car running in the driveway, burst through the front door to find Opal standing at the base of the stairs, pale as milk, her small body trembling. "Opal, what?" She pointed upstairs with a shaking hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I heard noises from your bedroom. I thought maybe Mom fell or something, so I went to check." Jason's legs moved on autopilot, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The master bedroom door stood ajar. He could hear it now. Low voices, movement, the unmistakable sounds of intimacy. He pushed the door open. Darlene and Theron froze, a tangle of sheets and guilt. His wife's face drained of color. His best friend, his business partner, the man who'd been best man at his wedding, who is Opal's godfather, had the audacity to look annoyed at the interruption. The world tilted. 8 years of friendship, 9 years of marriage. All of it obliterated in a single moment. "Jason," Darlene gasped, clutching the sheet to her chest. "We didn't how long?" His voice came out eerily calm, a thin veneer over the volcanic rage building in his chest. Theron sat up, running a hand through his dark hair with the same casual confidence he brought to client meetings. "Look, man, we need to talk about this rationally." "How long?" Darlene's eyes filled with tears. 2 years. 2 years. 730 days of lies. Of coming home to a wife who kissed him hello while her body still bore the impression of another man. Of working side by side with a friend who was systematically destroying his life. Get out, Jason said quietly. Both of you. Now, Chapter 2. The depths of betrayal. Darlene threw on clothes with trembling hands, her earlier bravado crumbling. Jason, please, we need to talk about this. Think about Opal. Don't you dare say her name. The words came out like ice. You don't get to use our daughter as a shield. Though was dressing with infuriating slowness, his expression shifting from caught red-handed to something more calculated. Jason recognized that look. It was the same one Theron wore when he was planning his next move in a negotiation. You're not thinking clearly, the said. Let's all take a breath and discuss this like adults. Adults? Jason laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. You want to talk about adult behavior? Get the hell out of my house before I do something we'll all regret. After they left, Theron pausing at the door as if he might say more than thinking better of it. Jason found Opal curled up on the living room couch, her arms wrapped around her knees. He sat beside her, pulling her into his lap like he'd done when she was smaller. I'm sorry you had to see that, baby. Is mommy leaving? Opal's voice was small, muffled against his chest. I don't know yet, but whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. I promise you that. They sat like that for a long time while Jason's mind began to shift from the initial shock into something more analytical. This was what he did. Assess crises, identify patterns, develop strategies. He'd built a career on understanding human behavior and motivation. 2 years. That meant the affair had started around the time Boone and Frell had landed their first major corporate client. Around the time Darlene had suddenly become supportive of his long work hours. Around the time they had suggested they expand the business, requiring Jason to take out a significant loan using their house as collateral. The pieces began clicking into place with sickening clarity. His phone rang. Oliver Moon, his attorney and one of his few genuine friends. I just got a very interesting call from Theron Farrell. Oliver said without preamble. He wants to discuss dissolving the partnership and claims you've been engaging in financial impropriety. Jason, what the hell is going on? Jason's blood ran cold. I'll be at your office in 30 minutes. He called Leshe Davidson, their elderly neighbor, to watch Opal. Leshe arrived within minutes, her weathered face creasing with concern when she saw the state of them both. Go do what you need to do, she said quietly. Opal will be safe with me. Oliver Moon's office overlooked the Willamette River. The attorney was in his late 50s, sharp-minded and sharper dressed with silver hair and the build of someone who had once been a college athlete. He'd been Jason's father's lawyer before his father's death from cancer 5 years ago. Sit, Oliver commanded, gesturing to a leather chair. Start from the beginning. Jason told him everything. The affair, the timing, his growing suspicions about Theron's motivations. Oliver listened without interruption, his expression growing darker. I pulled the partnership records while you were driving over, Oliver said, turning his computer monitor toward Jason. Look at this. The screen showed a series of financial transfers from Boone and Frell's operating account to a newly formed LLC. The company name made Jason's stomach drop. Frell Consulting Group. He's been siphoning money for 6 months, Oliver continued. Small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums. And see this, he's been having our shared clients sign amended contracts with clauses that allow them to transfer to a successor company with minimal penalty. He's planning to steal the business. The words came out flat, emotionless. That's my assessment. And based on the timing of his call to me, I'd say he's accelerating his timeline. He probably didn't expect you to find out about the affair for a few more months. Jason's mind raced. Theron had access to everything. Client lists, proprietary methodologies, strategic frameworks Jason had spent years developing. The non-compete clause in their partnership agreement had a loophole had insisted on adding 3 years ago. At the time, Jason had thought it was paranoia about being locked out of the industry if things went south. Now he understood it was premeditation. There's more, Oliver said grimly. The loan you took out 6 months ago to expand the office. Theron added you as the sole guarantor. If the business fails, you're personally liable for $800,000. That's not what I signed. Are you certain? Because the document filed with the bank has your signature. Jason closed his eyes. He'd signed dozens of documents that month during the expansion. Theron had always handled the administrative details while Jason focused on strategy and client relations. It would have been easy to slip in an altered agreement. He's planned this perfectly, Jason said quietly. Seduce my wife, destroy my marriage, steal my business, and leave me buried under debt. It's diabolical, Oliver agreed. But here's what he didn't count on. You being you. You're the best strategic mind I've ever seen, Jason. If anyone can outmaneuver him, it's you. Jason stood walking to the window. Rain pelted the glass, turning Portland into a watercolor blur. His reflection stared back at him. A man who'd built his entire adult life on trust and partnership, now facing the rubble of everything he believed in. But underneath the devastation, something else was crystallizing. A cold, calculating clarity. "Oliver, I need you to do something for me," he said. "Don't respond to Theron's call yet. Stallium, tell him you need to review documents." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Theon has spent 2 years setting up his perfect crime. It's time I showed him what a real strategist can do." Chapter 3, The Hidden Hand. That evening, with Opal asleep at Leshe Davidson's house, Jason sat in his home office and did what he did best. Analyze the battlefield. Theron Frell, age 36, grew up in wealth but squandered most of his inheritance on bad investments before meeting Jason in an MBA program 10 years ago. Charismatic, persuasive, but fundamentally insecure. He resented Jason's natural talent for reading people and situations even as he relied on it to build their business. Darlene Boone Lucero, age 34, came from a working-class family in Sacramento. Her mother, Esperanza Flores, had raised 3 daughters alone after Darlene's father abandoned them. Darlene had always been sensitive about money, about status. When had that insecurity become an opening for Theron? Jason pulled up old photos on his computer, company parties, vacations, Opal's birthday celebrations. He studied Theron and Darlene's body language in each image, looking for the moment the affair had begun. There, a photo from the company's 5th anniversary celebration. Theron's hand on Darlene's lower back, her body angled toward him, the micro-expressions of intimacy. Jason had been giving a speech, his back to them both. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about Opal's future. About doing this the right way. Darlene using their daughter to manipulate him already." Before he could respond, another message appeared. This one from Theron. "The business is going to get messy. Let's settle this professionally. I'm willing to buy you out for $200,000. $200,000 for a company currently valued at over $3 million. It was insulting. It was also a mistake. Theron had shown his hand too early, revealing his desperation. That meant there was something Jason didn't know yet. Some deadline driving Theron's timeline. Jason opened his laptop and began digging. He'd built Boone and Frell's systems, had access to everything. If the thought changing a few passwords would stop him, he'd underestimated his opponent. 3 hours later, Jason sat back in his chair, a grim smile on his face. He'd found it. Theron had been courting investors for Frell Consulting Group for months, but the capital was contingent on him acquiring Boone and Frell's client list and methodologies legitimately, meaning through a buyout or dissolution that wouldn't trigger lawsuits. The investor commitment was set to expire in 30 days. But there was more. Theron had made promises he couldn't keep, overstating the company's value, exaggerating his role in major client victories. He'd even forged Jason's signature on testimonials to investors. If those investors discovered the truth, they wouldn't just lose the deal, he'd face fraud charges. And Arlene, Jason found messages between them, carelessly left in Theron's cloud storage. She knew everything. More than that, she'd actively helped using her graphic design skills to create fake documents and presentations for Theron's investor pitches. They'd been partners in every sense of the word. Jason's hands trembled as he read the messages. In one, Darlene wrote, "He still doesn't suspect anything. He's so trusting it's almost pathetic. Once you have the company, we can file for divorce and I'll get half of everything anyway. Then we'll be set." Theron's response, "You're brilliant. We'll be in Bali this time next year, and he'll be drowning in debt. Poetic justice for always acting like he's smarter than everyone else." The words cut deeper than the affair itself. This wasn't passion or weakness. It was calculated cruelty. Jason closed the laptop and walked to his liquor cabinet, pouring 3 fingers of whiskey. He didn't drink it. Instead, he stared at the amber liquid, thinking about his father. Malcolm Boone had been a civil engineer who built bridges across 3 continents. But his real expertise had been in understanding structural weaknesses, the tiny flaws that under the right pressure would cause an entire system to collapse. Every structure has a breaking point. His father used to say, "The key is knowing where to apply force." Jason had built a career on that principle. He'd helped companies identify their structural weaknesses, taught them to shore up vulnerabilities before competitors could exploit them. Now it was time to apply those same skills to a different kind of structure. He and Darlene had built their betrayal on several key supports. Secrecy, timing, financial leverage, and Jason's expected emotional devastation. Remove those supports and the entire thing would collapse. But it had to be done carefully, strategically. Jason pulled out a notebook, paper, not digital, nothing that could be traced or hacked, and began to write. At the top of the page, he wrote one word, architect. That's what he'd always been really, not just of buildings or businesses, but of outcomes. He'd spent 10 years learning to design scenarios where clients emerged victorious while their competitors never even understood what had happened. Now he would architect something else entirely, not just revenge, justice. By dawn, he had the framework. It would take precision, patience, the willingness to hurt in the short term for victory in the long term. But first, he needed allies. He picked up his phone and made 2 calls. The first to Oliver Moon. I need you to file a forensic audit request on Boone and Frell. Make it look like you're building a case for my defense, but I want everything exposed. The second to an old friend from his MBA program, Terry Mata, who now worked in private investigation. I need everything you can find on the Farrell. Financial history, relationships, weaknesses, and I needed to stay off the books. Terry was silent for a moment. This isn't like you, Jason. No, Jason agreed. It's not, but I'm learning. He hung up and looked at the notebook again. 9 steps. 9 moves that would dismantle everything Thien and Darlene had built while leaving Jason and Opal standing in the clear. The game had begun. Chapter 4. Foundation cracks. Terry Mata arrived at Jason's house 3 days later with a manila envelope thick enough to be a novel. The private investigator was a compact man with careful eyes and the methodical demeanor of someone who made his living uncovering secrets. You sure you want to read this? Terry asked, setting the envelope on the kitchen table. Some things once you know them. I'm sure. Terry nodded and left without another word. Jason waited until Opal was at school before opening the envelope. The first section covered the finances. Despite the appearance of success, the expensive suits, the sports car, the waterfront condo, Theron was drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, personal loans from shadowy sources, gambling losses at the local casino totaling over $150,000 in the past year. The affair with Darlene wasn't just about desire or betrayal. Theron needed money desperately, and Boone and Frell represented his only way out. The investor deal was his lifeline. Without it, the people he owed money to would come collecting. The second section detailed Theron's other relationships. There was a string of affairs, one overlapping with the next, including one with a woman named Randy Holloway, who happened to be married to one of Theron's biggest investors. Jason studied Rye's photo. She was beautiful in a calculated way. Expensive highlights, designer clothes, the kind of woman who used her appearance as currency. According to Terry's notes, she and Theron had been seeing each other for 4 months, meeting at hotels while her husband traveled for business. The third section was about Darlene. Her graphic design business was failing. She lost her 3 biggest clients in the past 6 months, hadn't landed new work, and was behind on her business loan payments. The loan she'd taken out without telling Jason using forged documents that showed his consent. They've been planning this for a long time and they've been getting sloppy, desperate. Jason's phone rang. Oliver Moon. The forensic audit turned up something interesting. The attorney said, Theron's been making payments to someone named Kelvin Gregory. Does that name mean anything to you? Jason's blood chilled. He's a business broker. Specializes in hostile takeovers and corporate dissolution. Well, according to these payments, Theron retained him 8 months ago. Long before any of this came to light, 8 months. That was 2 months before Jason had taken out the expansion loan. Theron had been planning the destruction of their partnership before there was even a partnership to destroy. There's something else, Oliver continued. Gregory has a reputation. He doesn't just facilitate legal takeovers. He's been investigated twice for fraud, once for witness intimidation. The charge is never stuck, but the pattern is clear. You're saying Theron hired a criminal to help him steal my company? I'm saying you're dealing with someone more dangerous than a simple adulterer and embezzler. Watch your back, Jason. After hanging up, Jason sat with the implications. Theron wasn't just desperate. He was working with people who didn't play by rules. That changed the game entirely, but it also presented an opportunity. Jason spent the next week executing phase 1 of his plan documentation. He gathered every piece of evidence of Theron's embezzlement, every forged signature, every doctor document. He created redundant backups stored in multiple secure locations. If Theron tried to destroy evidence, he'd find himself grasping at air. Simultaneously, Jason began playing the role of the defeated husband. He sent Darlene a text. We should talk about custody arrangements. I don't want to make this ugly. Her response came immediately. Thank you for being reasonable. I know this is hard, but it's for the best. We can co-parent Opal beautifully. The audacity of it almost made him laugh. She actually thought she'd won. To the he wrote, "Let's discuss the buyout. I want this over with." Theron's reply was magnanimous. "I'm glad you're being mature about this. We can both move forward. I'll have Gregory draw papers." Perfect. Let them think he was broken, defeated, ready to surrender. Let them get comfortable in their victory. Meanwhile, Jason made another call. This one to Federico Davidson, Leche's nephew, who worked in investigative journalism for the Oregonian. They met at a coffee shop downtown, raining on the windows. "I need to show you something," Jason said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "But you can't run with it yet. Not until I give you the word." Federico examined the drive with a skeptical look of someone who'd been burned by sources before. "What's on it?" "Evidence of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Names you'll recognize. A story that'll make your career." "Why wait?" "Because timing is everything. Run it too early and the people involved will scatter, destroy evidence, claim victimhood. Wait for my signal and you'll have them dead to rights with no way out." Federico pocketed the drive. "You're playing a dangerous game, Jason." "No," Jason corrected. "I'm finishing one someone else started. I'm just better at it than they are." Chapter 5. Strategic Deception. 2 weeks after the discovery, Jason sat across from Kelvin Gregory in the man's downtown office. Gregory was in his 50s, impeccably dressed with the empty smile of a career predator. On his desk sat a buyout agreement that would transfer Jason's share of Boone and Frell to Theron for $200,000. "This is very fair considering the circumstances," Gregory said smoothly. "Mr. Frell is being generous." Jason scanned the document. It was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Signing it would leave him with nothing while absolving the of any wrongdoing. It would also void the non-compete clause for Theron while binding Jason to a 5-year restriction. "I'd like my attorney to review this," Jason said mildly. Gregory's smile tightened. "Of course, but Mr. Frell's offer expires in 72 hours. After that, I'm afraid the terms may become less favorable." "Is that a threat, Mr. Gregory? Simply a business reality? You have considerable debt, a failed business, a messy divorce on the horizon. Sometimes the wise move is knowing when to fold." Jason stood, leaving the in-signed documents on the desk. "I'll be in touch." Outside, he called Oliver. "They're getting desperate, which means we're close." "Close to what?" "To them making a mistake they can't recover from." The next phase required subtlety. Jason began reaching out to Boone and Frell's key clients, not to badmouth but to have informal conversations about the company's future. He expressed concern about structural changes and new strategic directions that might not align with the client's best interests. He didn't lie. He didn't accuse. He simply planted seeds of doubt. Within days, 2 major clients called to express concerns about the rumors of partnership dissolution. Theron in turn had to accelerate his investor timeline, pushing Farrell Consulting Group's launch forward before he'd secured all the necessary clients. Pressure, that was the key. Apply pressure at the right points, and people made mistakes. Meanwhile, Jason conducted his own investigation into Randy Holloway. He discovered she wasn't just having an affair with Theron. She was also her husband's business partner with signing authority on all investment accounts. The husband, Jamal Pope, was a real estate developer who'd made millions flipping properties during the market recovery. According to Terry Ma's research, Pope was notoriously jealous and had a temper that had landed him in anger management classes twice. Jason drafted an anonymous email to Jamal Pope. It contained no accusations, just a simple question. "Does your wife's investment in Farrell Consulting Group represent a conflict of interest? Might be worth having a conversation with her." He didn't send it yet. That card would be played at exactly the right moment. At home, Darlene had begun pressing for formal divorce proceedings. She'd moved into a hotel, claiming she needed space to process everything. In reality, she was staying with Theron at his condo. "We should start thinking about selling the house," she told Jason over coffee. They'd agreed to meet in public places for Opal's sake. "It's too big for you and Opal alone, and I'll need my share of the equity." "The house is in my name," Jason pointed out. "The down payment came from my father's life insurance." Darlene's expression hardened. "Oregon is a community property state. I'm entitled to half of everything we've built together, including your business debts, the loan you took out without my knowledge." She paused. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." He sipped his coffee. "I'm sure it'll all come out in discovery." He stood to leave, then paused. "By the way, how's Thene's new venture coming along? I hear investor commitments can be fickle things." The look on her face told him everything. She knew they were on shaky ground. "Good." That night, Opal asked him a question that stopped him cold. "Dad, Are you being the bad guy or the good guy? What do you mean, sweetie? She looked up from her coloring book. In your head, you're always planning something. I can tell, but I can't tell if you're planning good things or bad things. Jason knelt beside her. I'm planning to make sure you and I are okay. That's all that matters. But what about Mom? He chose his words carefully. Your mom made choices that hurt our family. I'm making sure those choices have consequences. Does that make sense? Opal thought about it then nodded. Like when I lied about breaking your coffee mug and you made me do extra chores. Something like that, but bigger. Okay. As long as you're not being mean just to be mean. Dad, can I tell you something? Always. I knew something bad was going to happen that day, but it wasn't a dream or anything. I just felt it like a stomachache but in my head. Does that make me weird? Jason pulled her into a hug. That makes you special. And you were trying to protect me. I should have listened. Will you listen next time? Every time, he promised. That promise will be tested sooner than he expected. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. The call came at 2 a.m. Terry Mata. His voice urgent. Jason, someone broke into your office. The police are there now. Jason was dressed and driving within minutes, his mind racing. The break-in was either legitimate, someone after computer equipment, or a targeted attempt to destroy evidence. He arrived to find 2 police officers talking to the building's night security guard. The office door had been forced open, but surprisingly little appeared to be disturbed. Computer equipment remained in place. The only thing clearly targeted, the filing cabinet where Jason kept hard copies of key business documents. They knew what they were looking for. The lead officer, Shannon Woodard, observed. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed with the careful manner of someone who'd seen too many crimes to be surprised by human nature. This wasn't a random burglary. No, Jason agreed. It wasn't. Officer Woodard studied him. You know who did this? I have suspicions, but nothing I can prove. Want to share those suspicions? Jason considered accusing Theron without evidence would seem like the bitter accusations of a cuckold husband, but planting the seed in law enforcement's mind might prove useful later. My business partner and I are in the middle of a contentious dissolution. I've been documenting some irregularities in our financial records. These are copies of those documents. Were Woodard corrected, gesturing to the empty filing cabinet were. Jason agreed. Fortunately, I believe in redundancy. He didn't mention that the documents in that cabinet were decoys, outdated forms, and irrelevant paperwork. The real evidence had been digitized and backed up months ago. Let the think he'd won this round. But Woodard was sharper than he'd expected. Mr. Boone, I'm going to give you some advice. Whatever you're planning, whatever game you're playing with your partner, make sure you stay on the right side of the law. Revenge has a way of making people do stupid things. I appreciate the concern, officer, but I'm not interested in revenge. No. What are you interested in? Justice, Jason said simply. There's a difference. Back home, Jason sent a carefully crafted message to Theron. I know what you did. This is over. Theron's response came within minutes. I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe we should meet face to face. Clear the air. They agreed to meet at a neutral location, the lobby bar of the Heathman Hotel. Jason arrived early, took a corner table where he could see the entire room. When they walked in, Jason barely recognized his former friend. The man looked haggarded, his usual confidence replaced by something more desperate. You look terrible, Jason observed as Theron sat down. Yeah, well, breaking and entering isn't my usual skill set. I had to hire people. Theron signaled for a whiskey. You've made this very difficult, Jason. I've made it difficult. You seduced my wife, embezzled from our company, and try to frame me for fraud. You left me no choice. Theron's voice rose, then dropped when nearby patrons glanced over. You with your perfect strategic mind, your natural talent. Do you know what it's like? Always being in someone's shadow, having clients tell you they really want to work with a smart one. So, this is about your ego. It's about survival. I'm buried in debt, Jason. People I owe money to aren't the type to wait for payment plans. Farrell Consulting Group was supposed to save me. Was Jason caught the past tense? Theron's jaw tightened. Your little conversations with our clients have spooked them. Half are reconsidering their contracts and the investors are getting cold feet because they're hearing rumors that the business is built on stolen methodologies. Imagine that. You're destroying everything. Not just for me, but for Darlene, too. We had plans, a future. You should have thought about that before you decided to burn down my life. Theron leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Sign a buyout, Jason. Take your $200,000 and walk away because if you don't, Things are going to get very unpleasant for you. Kelvin Gregory has connections. He can make your life a living hell. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. As a friend, Jason laughed, a cold sound. We stopped being friends 2 years ago. You just forgot to tell me. He stood to leave. Theron grabbed his arm. You think you're so smart, but you're not the only one who can play games. No, Jason agreed, pulling free. But I'm the only one who wins them. As he walked out, Jason sent 2 messages. The first to Jamal Pope, the anonymous email about Rye's involvement with Theron along with a photo Terry had obtained of them entering a hotel together. The second to Federico Davidson. Stand by. The story breaks in 72 hours. The final phase was beginning. Chapter 7. Controlled demolition. Jamal Pope's response to discovering his wife's affair was volcanic and public. Within 24 hours, he'd pulled all investment commitments from Farrell Consulting Group, frozen Rye's access to their joint accounts, and filed for divorce. But more importantly, he'd started asking questions. Questions about where his money had been going, what promises Theron had made, what exactly Randy had been signing off on during her business meetings with Theron. An independent audit revealed that Randy had been funneling Pope's investment capital to Theron ahead of schedule without proper documentation or oversight. It looked less like legitimate business investment and more like money laundering. Suddenly, Theron didn't just have angry investors. He had the attention of federal investigators. Jason watched it unfold from a distance. Each piece falling into place with the precision of a demolition sequence. He designed it that way, not directly doing anything illegal, but creating the conditions where Theron's own actions would destroy him. Darlene called, panicking. Jason, you have to do something. They're investigating Theron. They think I was involved in fraud. Were you? Silence. I helped with some documents, she admitted. Graphics, presentations. I didn't know he was lying to investors. Didn't you? I didn't. Look, we need to talk about protecting Opal. If this goes to trial, Opal is protected. She has me. What you need to worry about is protecting yourself. He hung up. Oliver Moon called an hour later. Kelvin Gregory just contacted me. He wants to broker a deal. They'll void the buyout agreement and split the company's liquidation assets 50-50 if you agree not to pursue criminal charges against the. What did you tell him? That I'd relay the message. Jason, this is a good deal. You get almost $1.5 million. Clear your debts and walk away clean. No. No. This isn't about money, Oliver. This was never about money. Then what is it about? Jason thought about his daughter's trembling hands pointing upstairs. About 2 years of calculated lies, about the smug satisfaction on Theron's face when he'd suggested Jason should be rational. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else. Theron and Darlene try to destroy me because they thought I'd roll over. Gregory makes a living helping predators steal from trusting partners. They all need to understand there are consequences. You're talking about scorched earth. I'm talking about justice. 2 days later, Federico Davidson's article hit the Oregonian's front page. Local consultant accused of defrauding investors' partners. It was meticulously researched. Every claim backed by documentation Jason had provided. In named names, Theron Farrell, Kelvin Gregory detailed their methods, their history of questionable deals. But what made the article devastating was its human angle. Federico had interviewed 3 other entrepreneurs who'd been victimized by Gregory's hostile dissolution tactics, always following the same pattern. Befriend, betray, legally plunder. Theron's face was plastered across the business section, looking guilty in a photo where he'd been caught mid-grimace at a charity event. The court of public opinion reached its verdict before lunch. By evening, Boone and Frell's remaining clients had terminated their contracts with Theron and reached out to Jason directly, asking if he'd consider continuing their relationships independently. Frell Consulting Group officially died before it ever launched. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The bankruptcy filing came first. Theron, drowning in debt and legal fees, had no choice. The casino loans came due, and the people he owed weren't inclined to wait while he sorted out his legal problems. According to Terry Mata, who continued to monitor the situation, Theron had to sell his condo, his car, everything of value. He moved into a studio apartment in a part of town where he'd once dismissed clients as not our demographic. But Jason wasn't finished. The documents Theron had stolen during the break-in, those were carefully planted fakes that included what appeared to be communications between he and Gregory about bribing a city official for favorable zoning decisions. Completely fabricated, but convincing enough that when they tried to use them to deflect from his own crimes, he only implicated himself in something worse. The forgery was obvious to anyone who looked closely, but they didn't look closely. He was desperate, cornered, and he played exactly the card Jason had left for him. When the district attorney's office investigated the bribery claim, they quickly determined the documents were fake, which meant Theron had just submitted false evidence to authorities, adding obstruction of justice to his growing list of problems. Darlene tried to distance herself, claiming she'd been manipulated by Theron, but the emails and messages Jason had recovered told a different story. She'd been an active, willing participant. The divorce proceedings became a matter of public record. Oliver Moon presented evidence of her business fraud, the forged loans, the systematic deception. The judge's ruling was unambiguous. Jason retained full custody of Opal, the house, and all marital assets. Darlene was ordered to repay her fraudulent business loan, which effectively bankrupted her. She moved back to Sacramento, living with her mother, Esperanza, working retail to pay off her debts. But the cruelest cut came when her mother called Jason directly. "I raised my daughter to be better than this," Esperanza said, her voice heavy with shame. "What she did to you, to that beautiful little girl. I'm sorry isn't enough, but I'm sorry anyway. Thank you, Mrs. Flores. I want you to know we're not giving her money. She needs to face what she's done. And if there's anything Opal ever needs, you call me. She's still my granddaughter and she deserves better than this mess." It was the only grace note in the entire sordid affair. Kelvin Gregory faced his own reckoning. The article had brought him attention he didn't want. The state bar opened an investigation into his business practices. 2 former clients came forward with allegations of fraud. His career built on predatory dissolution of partnerships was coming apart. In a last desperate move, Gregory tried to sue Jason for defamation. The case was dismissed within weeks. Truth being an absolute defense against such claims. 3 months after that morning, when Opal had begged him to stay home, Jason stood in the empty office that had once been Boone and Frell. The space echoed, stripped of furniture, ready for a new tenant. Oliver Moon stood beside him. "You did it. Against all odds, you came out ahead." "Did I?" Jason looked around at the emptiness. "My marriage is over. My business partner turned out to be my enemy. My daughter saw things no child should see. But you protected her. You protected yourself. And you made sure those who wronged you faced consequences." Oliver paused. "Some might say you went too far. Some might. Do you?" Oliver considered. "I think you fought back against people who tried to destroy you using every advantage they had. You just happened to be smarter than they were. If that's wrong, then the entire concept of justice is flawed." Jason's phone buzzed. A text from Opal, who was at Leshe Davidson's house. "Can we have pizza for dinner? And can we watch the octopus movie?" He smiled. "I have to go. My daughter wants pizza. Go be with her." That's what this was all about. Anyway, Chapter 9. Architect of Tomorrow. 6 months later, Jason Boone stood in a new office, smaller than the old one, but entirely his own. The sign on the door read, Boone Strategic Consulting. He'd rebuilt from scratch, keeping only the clients who'd specifically requested to continue working with him. The business was leaner, more focused, and entirely under his control. But more importantly, he created something new, a consulting service specifically for entrepreneurs who've been victimized by hostile takeovers, predatory partners, or business fraud. He called it the Phoenix Project. His first client was a woman named Christine Herman, whose business partner had attempted the exact same playbook Gregory specialized in. Jason had identified the pattern early, helped her document everything, and set up a legal fortress that made hostile takeover impossible. She'd walked away with her company intact and her predatory partner facing charges. "You saved my life," Christine told him during their final meeting. "Not just my business, my actual life." "I've been where you are," Jason said simply. "I know what it takes to fight back." At home, Opal was thriving. The trauma of that terrible day had faded, replaced by the security of knowing her father would always protect her. She still had her intuitive moments, warning him before minor problems arose, sensing when people weren't trustworthy. He'd learned to listen. "Dad," she asked one evening while they were doing dishes. "Do you still think about Mom sometimes?" "Do you?" "Yeah, I miss her, but I'm also kind of mad at her." "That's okay. You can be both. Do you think she'll ever say sorry?" Jason dried a plate, considering his words carefully. "Maybe. But even if she does, it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. Some choices change everything. Like your choices changed everything for Mr. Theron and Mr. Gregory. Smart kid. I made sure they faced consequences for their actions." "That's different, is it?" "Yes. Because they hurt people on purpose. I made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else." Opal thought about that. "Okay, that makes sense." The doorbell rang. Terry Ma stood on the porch looking uncomfortable. "You should see this," he said, handing Jason a thin folder. Inside was a news clipping from a Sacramento paper. Darlene Lucero, she'd taken back her maiden name, had been arrested for check fraud. Small-time stuff, but it suggested she hadn't learned anything from her previous downfall. She's working retail, stealing from the register to pay off debts. Terry said, "Thought you should know." Jason felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just the distant observation of someone watching a tragedy play out from a safe distance. "Thanks for letting me know." That's it. No comment. What would I say? She made her choices. She's living with the consequences just like we all do. After Terry left, Jason stood in his home office, looking at the framed photo on his desk. It was from Opal's 8th birthday party, just the two of them at the zoo. Her face lit up with joy as she watched the octopus exhibit she'd been fascinated by ever since the documentary. That was what mattered. Not the scorched earth he'd left behind. Not the enemies he defeated. This moment, this daughter, this chance to rebuild something better. His phone rang. A potential new client recommended by Christine Herman, another entrepreneur being targeted by a predatory partner. "Mr. Boone, I'm hoping you can help me. My business partner has been acting strange, and I think he's planning something." Jason picked up his notebook, the same one he'd used to architect Theron and Darlene's downfall. But this time, he'd be using those skills to build rather than destroy. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start from the beginning." As the client talked, Jason made notes, already identifying patterns, seeing the vulnerabilities, designing the counter-strategy. This was what he'd always done best, architect outcomes. He just needed to learn when to build and when to demolish. Outside, rain droomed against the windows. Portland weather constant and cleansing. Opal was in her room doing homework, safe and happy. Though was broke, facing multiple lawsuits and under federal investigation. Gregory had been disbarred and was facing trial for fraud. Darlene was in Sacramento burning what remained of her life one bad choice at a time. And Jason, he was teaching his daughter to trust her intuition, helping others avoid the traps he'd fallen into, and building something better from the ruins of betrayal. Some might call it revenge. Officer Woodard would probably say he'd gotten dangerously close to crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But Jason called it justice. The kind you have to architect yourself when the people you trusted decide to become your enemies. The kind where you win not by becoming like them, but by being better, smarter, and more patient. The kind where at the end you can look at your daughter and know you fought for her without losing yourself. "Dad." Opal called from her room. "Can you help me with my math homework?" "Coming, sweetie." He closed a notebook and went to help his daughter with her fractions, leaving the ruins of his old life behind and stepping fully into the future he'd built. One careful, calculated move at a time. And there you have it.